I'm Dana K. White. I am the author of Decluttering at the Speed of Life, and I am the creator of the No Mess Decluttering Process. It's a 5-step process that guarantees progress and only progress in any amount of time on any level of mess if you follow the process, right? If you want to get a printable of my 5-step process, you can go to aslobcomesclean.com/5, F-I-V-E, get a printable there. And I've also talked about it in a lot of videos, and it's laid out in great detail in order in Decluttering at the Speed of Life, my book, right? Okay, but we're gonna talk specifically about the 2 decluttering questions. I've been doing a series of videos where I am diving into each step of the process and addressing some of the questions that I get a lot about these different steps. So now we are on step 4. This is the 4th step in the process. It is valuable on its own, even if you haven't watched the other videos. It's my 2 decluttering questions. So asking the decluttering questions is step 4 in the No Mess Decluttering Process. So let's talk about it, right? By the time you get to this point, by the time you are on step 4 and you're asking the decluttering questions, the easy stuff is gone. The first 3 steps of the process are trash, actual trash, easy stuff, things that have an established home somewhere else in the house, they're just here and not there, and donations. Those things are gone, and what's left in the space are things that either go in this space or that you don't know what to do with. This is how we determine what to do with these things. I used to work on a space and be like, okay, I can get to a certain point, and then I get down to all these little things and I don't know what to do. That's how I developed these questions, right? These questions are the way I determine what to do with all the things, whether it goes in my house and then these questions give me a place, like establish a home for this item in my house, or does this item need to leave? Okay, so that's the point of these questions, working through every last item. I narrowed it down to these 2 questions because I had too much stuff for me to ask a bunch of questions about each and every item, and I needed to be able to work through stuff really quickly. Also, to be clear, these questions do not use emotions to make decisions about the stuff in your house. My whole process, we don't use emotions. We don't use the emotions to decide what should go and what should stay. We just embrace reality and instinct in our home because I have a lot of emotions about my stuff. And if I let myself use emotions and think about how I feel about an item, I'm gonna wanna keep things that there's no place for in my home. So these questions take that out of the process while acknowledging that those emotions are real, but we're not gonna use them to declutter. My first decluttering question is, where would I look for this item first? If I needed this item, where would I look for it first? It's very important that you ask this question exactly as I've written it, okay? Exactly as I'm saying it. A lot of people just assume, and I know this because they say, well, when I was asking myself, where should this item go, blah, blah, and I'm like, yeah, that's not at all the same thing. Where should this item go and where would I look for it first? 2 very different questions, all right? If you say, well, I don't know where this item goes, well, yeah, that's where we are in the process. If you knew where it went, it's already gone because it left in the easy stuff step. We are asking, where would I look for this item first? Even if I have no confidence that it's gonna be there. I don't have a home for this item. That's what I'm doing here. Even if I assume that I am starting what is going to be a 3-hour-long search for this item where I'm going to tear my entire house apart. Because that's what my experience used to be when I would look for things, right? At the beginning of what you assume is going to be this big, dramatic, daunting task of finding this item, where's the first place where you would look with no confidence it's going to be there? What drawer would you open? What closet would you look in? What shelf would you look on? That's what we're asking here. Knowing it's going to be there, not part of this process, okay? So let's get into instinct. A lot of the struggles and frustrations with this question come from the past struggles and frustrations with decluttering that people like me have experienced, okay? I had not successfully decluttered before. I had struggled in my home for my entire life. My home, my room, my dorm rooms, my locker in high school, all of that, okay? I struggled with all spaces with physical stuff. And so I had to develop the trust in my own instinct. So for you, if you're thinking, that couldn't work, it might be because you don't trust your instinct yet. Here's how you learn to trust your instinct. Go ahead and do it. When you ask yourself the question, where would I look for this first? Take it to that space, put it in the place where you would look for it first. And then when you look for that item, you're going to find it in the first place where you look for it. 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100. I mean, like, it's amazing how it works. And it is an amazing feeling to find something in the first place where you look for it. That's what it feels like to be organized, right? So, I mean, I had to assume that for a long time, and now I know, yes, that's what it feels like, right? Is I know exactly where to look for something. But every time that happens, you are gaining trust in yourself, and that's going to help make it easier and easier in the future. But for now, trust me and say, I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna put things in the first place where I would look for it. I'm gonna make that its home, all right? The second part of that first question is really important. This part's not a question, but it is the key to the No Mess Decluttering process. And that is, when I ask myself the question, where would I look for this first? Then I take it there now. I take it to that space. I do this so that I don't end up with piles of things that are now outside of the space I was decluttering, and then I get distracted, which happens to me every single time, right? And I have to walk away, life happens, and I come back and now it's this big pile of stuff. I'm worse off than I was before. Also, when I put it in a pile, because I think, oh, where would I look for this first? Okay, yeah, and then I put it in a pile to go there later. When I go back to actually put those things away, I have to ask myself that same question again, right? Which is the complete opposite of efficiency, to redo that. So I go ahead, I take it there now to that place where I would look for it first. And here's what happens that's so important in this process. When I get to that space, I am faced with the reality of that space. Because before, it was just in my mind. I was like, oh, I would look first on the top shelf of the entryway closet. Okay. And then I take it there now and I realize that there's 4 others of this exact same item, and actually I can get rid of 3 of those. Or I get to that space and it's a complete disaster on its own, right? Like, this is a question I get a lot, because for those of us who, like me, I was completely overwhelmed with my whole house. Well, every space was its own issue, right? So it's like, how do I make progress here? And then I take it there now and this space needs to be worked on. Well, we don't stop everything and work on that space. All I have to do is remove something to create the space for this item that I have just identified, not established, but identified that this should be its home, because this is the place where I would look for it first, right? So as I take it there now, I remove something that ideally is either trash or a dead donation, because the trash bag and the donatable donate box are back at the space that I was originally decluttering, okay? So I'm gonna take them there, and then I've created space for this item so it now has a real home, right? And in that scenario, this item has gone to a real home, and I haven't made this new space any worse, because I didn't just add it to, I took something out in order to make the space for it. And then that something is going in the trash or the donate box, and my whole house has moved a step forward, and the space that I'm working on has moved a step forward, okay? So that's the key to the no mess. We take it there now and we embrace the actual reality of the house that we are living in. And that's how we make step by step by step that ultimately is going to lead to a house that is easy for me to keep under control. If I ask myself the question, where would I look for this first? And my answer is, If I don't have an answer, then I ask myself the second decluttering question. If I needed this item, would it ever occur to me that I already had one? This is hard because you're holding it in your hand, so you know that you have it. But I have to be honest with myself. I didn't have a place where I would look for it first because I wouldn't go looking for it. Because if I needed it, I would not look for it in my house. I would go and buy another one, which is the opposite of what I want, because then I've brought another one into my house. This space has remained a disaster, and there's stuff in my house I don't even know is there, right? So I am trying to get to the point where I know what I have, I don't have excess, and I actually know where things are. And that is none of these things, okay? So I put it in the donate box if I cannot answer the question, where would I look for it first? I have to be honest with myself. I didn't know I had it. I would never have gone looking for this item. Would it ever have occurred to me that I already had one? No, it needs to go. All right. Now this is hard. This is hard. Okay. It is possible that I'm going to have to replace this item, but I made a decision that the money that I might spend replacing this item, not for sure, but might spend replacing this item if I ended up needing it someday, is money that I am willing to spend for this space that I'm working on to be functional and decluttered between now and this hypothetical time when I might need to replace this item. So let's say it's a $20 item that I would have to go out and purchase. Maybe it's even a $50 item. Usually it's a $3 item, right? But I might have to replace it. If I do, I will consider that the money that I am paying for this space to be functional and decluttered in my home. Sometimes I'll ask myself, Dana, if somebody asked you, would you pay $20 for this space to be functional and decluttered? What would you say? And I say to myself, I would say, take my $20. That's what I'm doing, right? But it's also hypothetical. Most of the time, most of the times, I never end up needing to replace that item. It's very rare that I actually need to replace something. But if I do, I'm counting that as the value of this space. I place value not on the things that I don't really have a place for and I didn't even remember I had it. I put the value on a decluttered, clean, functional space. Okay? 2 more things, all right, about these 2 decluttering questions. Sometimes people will say, I didn't have an answer to where I would look for it first, and my answer to would it ever occur to me that I already had one was absolutely yes. I totally know I have this. They just insist. I know that I have it. If it is true that you know that you have it, there has to be an answer to the first question. Remember, it is not a question of do you know where it is? That's not even what we're dealing with here. Those things were the easiest things. This is an item that you don't know where it is, but if you knew that you had it, there has to be a place you would look for first. So imagine yourself freaking out, going, where is it? And picture where you would walk first. That is the place where you look for it first. So if you get to the second question and you say, no, I know that I have this, go back to the first question and be honest, okay? Really pay attention to, am I going on instinct or am I trying to figure it out? If I'm figuring it out, if I'm analyzing, if I'm deciding, I'm not actually going on instinct and I need to be going on instinct. And finally, I want to address, sometimes people will say, why do you do them in this order? Why don't you first ask, would it ever occur to me that I already had one? First of all, do whatever order is helpful for you. Ask yourself whatever questions you need to ask for you to make progress. Here is why I do it in this order. Sometimes I'm surprised that I have something, but I still ask myself, where would I look for this first, and see if I have an answer for that, because there's a lot of things that it doesn't cross my mind until the moment I need it. And then I go, oh, I think I have one of those. And then I go looking for it, right? And if I asked myself the second question first, it would backfire on me, right? Like I am the type of person who I don't necessarily trust myself to remember everything. And I need to ask that first question first, right? Like I may not remember this item specifically, but if I can answer the question, where would I look for this first? And then there's actual room for it there, then I get to keep it. And then I don't feel like it's such a harsh rule for me. So that's why I do it in this order. And it works really well for, so many thousands of you, right? Who tell me that it works really well for you. So that's why I don't have the order swapped. But if the order swapping works best for you, then that's what you should do. Okay. All right. I hope this has been helpful. I hope I made some kind of sense. I'm trying to record several of these over the course of a day that I'm with Reed. So anyway, we will talk next time about making it fit, implementing the container concept. That is the final step of the decluttering process. And so we're going to really dive into that and all the things around it. Okay. All right. I will talk to y'all later. Bye.